Ask the Podcast Coach for December 10th, 2022.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means, hey, it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about things like, what does it mean to take your podcast to the next level? We're going to talk about Ask the Company First. We might talk a little bit about the new Sounds Profitable thing that just came out, The Thing. We're going to talk about The Thing, Jim. And to help me talk about the things is, you know him, you love him, from the averageguy.tv. Jim Collison, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be back on Saturday mornings. Good to be back in the home studio. Good to be with you. Let's do this.
Yeah, it's got to be kind of like, no, I mean, not that your office was like super uncomfortable, but it's just nice. And I mean,
fun, but it's just good to be home.
Well, and you're cozying up next to the fire I see in the background.
Well, no, I got the fire going, and I mean, how it took a while. I had to get some kindling in there and some stuff going, but it is for everyone. It's safe for everyone.
That's right.
I don't really have a fire on my
on your bookcase.
People are taking all these things seriously these days.
Well, you know, another way you could warm yourself up, would be to fire up a cup of Java or whatever your nickname for coffee is. Jim's like, just hit the button. And of course, that coffee pour is brought to you by, he said, pulling up the slide as he speaks, the one and only Mark over at podcastbranding.co or .co if you're American, apparently. If you need good artwork, and I'm actually thinking, in fact, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hire Mark to redo the podcast review show artwork. He's done all my other artwork, and I looked at that one, and I was like, yeah, that looks like it was done by Dave. And what Mark does is he sits down with you one-on-one to make sure he understands kind of just the vibe of your show, where you're going, so that the artwork matches the brand, hence podcastbranding.co. And if you need artwork, if you need a whole website, if you need an audit on, if you're like, what is branding? I don't get it. Go over to podcastbranding.co. The great thing is Mark is not only an award-winning graphic artist, he's also a podcaster. So there's none of this explaining stuff where it's like, oh, it's like a radio show. And he's also not a slimy dude on Fiverr that steals other people's stuff. He actually makes it himself. Check it out, podcastbranding.co.
Man, coffee is extra hot this morning. I just brewed it. Big thanks to Dan Lefebvre over there, Based on a True Story podcast at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. Sent me this awesome mug as well for this. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship. If you're it's the holiday season, you might need something extra to listen to on your podcast channel. Give it a try. Ever wonder, is it really based on a true story, or how much? It's almost always, there's some element of truth. Almost always. Maybe not Pirates of the Caribbean, but there's some elements of truth to it. You can check it out. He's got well over 200 episodes, based on a true story podcast.com. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
Absolutely. Of course, the way this works, if you're watching live, thanks for being here. We got 18 people right now in the chat room. And if you have a question, you can throw it in the chat room, or if you want to jump into the actual call, well, you can just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And of course, if you're watching live, and you're on Twitter, tweet out that we're live, where there's a whole lot of buzz going on about all these different places popping up that are, the replacement for Twitter. And here's the thing. See, we're going to start off, you know what? We're going to table that conversation. We're going to come back to that. I don't want to open with that because that gets into politics and things like that. So we'll
right.
Something
Let's
else.
Get warmed up.
Yeah, we'll get warmed up first. So I got this question this morning out of a Facebook group. He says, my podcast has 40 episodes and about 30 hours of content. It's starting to gather interest, and I want to take it to where? Funky Town? The next level. That's right. I've edited, I've produced, and published all of the content to this point. I would like a professional to go back and get it to the next level. Standard mixing and editing, but additional transcription and possible website Oh, wow. I didn't read that line. And possible website creation.
Possible. Wait a minute. Possible.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you?
think, okay.
Well, you got 40 episodes and you don't have a website. So there's
maybe
one.
Maybe they're using the
Right.
host website.
Yeah, that's true.
That's close.
Yeah. So he says, any recommendations? And I just kind of was like, that is one of those phrases that gets thrown out there so often. I want to take it to the next level. I want to go next level, blah, blah, blah. Next level hot chocolate, next level, basket weaving, and next, and I always hear next level podcasting. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean to you?
More listeners. It always is just, I just want more listeners, right? Which just, you got to be, I think you have to be careful what you wish for on some of these. Like, you think you want more listeners and you do all these things to get them, and then you get some and you don't really like them. You're like, oh, I don't like these people. They're harassing me, or they're giving me feedback I don't want to listen to, or they're whatever. So I think have an idea. What more listeners does not equate to success, right? I think we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're successful, with that. I mean, but I think early in podcasting, that's the golden ticket, is I just want more listeners. That's the next level. How do I do that? And you do all these gyrations to get it done. I really think we miss the point sometimes. Not that we shouldn't do those things. Those things need to be done, websites and all that other stuff. But listening, going back to the audience, who is it? Is it people I want to spend time with? I mean, would you spend a Saturday afternoon with one of your listeners? If the answer is yes, then okay, you're headed down the right path. Find more places to gather people like that. That's what I think, Dave. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I'm with you. I think in the end, they're just saying, how do I get more listeners? Because in the Facebook group, about 3 questions down was like, I know this has been asked before, which I thought was an interesting way of starting the question. But how do I get more listeners? Because it's kind of like saying, hey, I know I should do a search in the group, but I'm not. So here's the question. But yeah, to me, I think next level is everyone gets a microphone. No more sharing a microphone.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think it depends. In fact, Chris Nessie says it's kind of subjective, and it kind of depends on where you're at. And that might
even 2 microphones in the same room doesn't necessarily guarantee success.
Right. Yeah, because you sound better now. But if it's still like, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to talk about? That's not going to help. So there's, maybe that's part of it. A little more planning, I think, was probably involved in next level podcasting. I think
it could be.
Yeah,
it could be.
Yeah, I think to me, and that's a hard question to ask, because, like Chris said, it's unique for each person. Because
Joe Rogan's quality, his audio quality is good. His video quality is terrible. Like it's not. I mean, the camera angles all over the place, and it's just kind of, there's just kind of they just kind of show up in stuff, and like it's not what you would expect at a network level. Is he necessarily worried about that? No, because he's interesting to his audience, right? He's interesting. It all goes back to, I think, next level is just be interesting.
Yeah, that's
the hard part, right? Is how do I be interesting? Sometimes you force it, and it's, you're like, I don't know if that's, and it's different for everybody. I just had on Home Gadget Geeks, I just had the guy who got me started in podcasting, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever that was. And we reminisced a little bit about the old days. And man, Dave, we talked about the most boring stuff, like home servers, literally computers, hard drives, data could not be any more boring, right?
Unless your audience is people that are, doing the Home Gadget Geeks. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like-minded in that area. We did meetups, and we'd get 30 to 50 guys to show up from all around the country to talk about this stuff. And I was talking to him about, maybe the meetup thing we take virtual, maybe not on Zoom, but like actually VR, I'm building this VR rig, maybe. And he gave me this look like, there's still something about getting people together, in person, this kind of thing. So I think that is the key. All this AI and all these tricks and all this SEO stuff, I think we get too wrapped up in it, and we forget It's about people. Today there's 20, 25 listeners on the other end, Dave. Those are our people. They're showing up on Saturday to be entertained because there's no information in the show. So it's all entertainment, right? And that's who we've been given, right? And so take care of the people you've been given.
That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of what I did at the School of Podcasting this year. Is I still do coaching and consulting to anyone who wants it, but I added it to the School of Podcasting because I'm like, I want to keep the people that have decided to work with me. Let's just, in the immortal words of James Taylor, I think it was, shower the people you love with love. Yeah. Show them the way that you feel. I know it's James Taylor. I don't know if he wrote that song, but
nice memory recall there, Dave.
I grew up.
Have you been taking something for that?
Yeah, I don't know what I had for breakfast, but I can recall lyrics from James Taylor from 1977. Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big James Taylor fan. Neil Headley from Knop Studios. By the way, if you haven't taken his copywriting course, very good course. He's making me think. I like it. In terms of next level, better to have 100 passionate fans than 1,000 listeners who find you disposable. Absolutely.
Be excited about those 100 that you do have, and not always wishing for. I think sometimes we go try to find the 99 and leave the one, right? And the 99 may not even be worth it.
Somebody finally said this to James Cridlin, and I've thought it for a while, is without spending too much time on the lovely world of podcasting 2.0, there are a lot of people that are like, hey, we got a boost. Somebody gave us a Rush boost. It's 2112, which is the name of an album from the band Rush. But when you look it up and you figure out how much money you just got, like it's 2,112 satoshis is like $1.02 or 98 cents. It's really, and we're like, woo, we got 2,100. And I'm like, meanwhile, like you got to be careful with this. If you're doing Patreon and podcasting 2.0,
yeah.
The people that gave you $20, like I give you $20 a month, I don't get a mention. Somebody just gave you 68 cents because there's ducks on the pond. I'm like, you got to be careful with that. So take care of the people that are taking care of you.
Well, you somehow have to take care of both, and that's the tough. Now you serve two masters, right? You serve a Patreon master, and you serve a Boost, whatever it is, master. And you're right? I mean, that can be, You got to figure out a way to do both.
Yeah, it's tricky any way you slice it. So the other thing I would say next level podcasting is editing. Because you said it, you got to be interesting. And I was, we had a cool, every Friday, the School of Podcasting has lunch with Dave. So I come on from 12:30 to 1 and we just talk podcasting and answer questions. And so we're talking about a couple different things. And I was like, man, I'm definitely repurposing this to the members. Because there are times when we do that and we're just in there talking, 80s rock, I'm like, okay, we're not going to repurpose this one. But it was really cool. It's 36 cents. Great. Daniel says 2112 is his 36 cents. Beautiful. But that somebody gave up to do. I hesitate a little bit because even though it's only 36 cents, somebody still did it. Yeah.
And I think you need to acknowledge that still in some way.
Well, and
you can't poo-poo 36 cents on the air.
Well, and the other thing is boosting anybody satoshis means they went to their bank and tied it to an app, and then they tied that app to the app that they're listening to. And it's not that easy. That's the part that's missing. We keep focusing on making it easy to receive satoshis. Can we focus on making it easy to give? Like how can I just go into an app, tie it to my bank, and go? There's too many steps there, but
they probably changed podcast players to do it too. I mean, they made a commitment to do this if that's what they're doing. So, that's why I said you got to do both, right? You can't poo-poo one. That means nothing. No, they did something for. It's like an email. An email doesn't cost them anything, but we relish that. So I want to be careful with that we don't.
Yeah, no. By all means, boost away. This show is equipped to to receive.
How would they do that, Dave? Can they boost right now?
You can boost right now if you're in
based on this boost conversation.
Yes, if you're
a gym boost. I was born in 1968. That would be a gym boost. If we're just making up things to have boost numbers.
Yeah, you can see in my app, speaking of adding, I'm out of funds in Castapod. You'll see where it says insufficient funds. I need to refill here. But yeah, and how do they do that? They go to newpodcastapps.com. And here's a tangent on that one. If you really want people to use these apps, please, look, I know it's not going to be perfect, but oh my God, I can't find one that's not full of bugs. I love Castapod. It's just like Overcast, except it doesn't work. Not a lot, but it's annoying little things like I was listening this morning, hit play, get in the shower, get out of the shower, hit stop, turn off the wireless speaker, hit play, Castapod goes, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, and it's not a hard fix. I just go into Castapod and either go play another episode and then come back and hit play and it'll play again. Or in some cases, I have to close Castapod, reopen it and hit play. So these are like 4-second solutions. It's just annoying. And I have used, I started off using Fountain, which I'm way far away from probably what it is now, but it had tons of bugs. I've used Podverse. Podverse was really close. Podverse had a cool web version, but the thing I didn't like about Podverse is here's what I want in an app. I want it to have smart, playlists. So I can say, hey, add Daniel J. Lewis to the podcasting playlist and add, anybody, David Hooper to the playlist so that when they have new episodes out, it goes there. I want it to have, the typical stuff, play it faster or slower. If it'll eliminate spaces, that's cool too. And I really love it if they let me set settings per show, because I love the fact when I can switch from one show to the other and it just automatically speeds up and slows down. Like I listened to Podcraft with Colin from, I'm forgetting Colin's last name. I want to say Jost, but that's the guy from Saturday Night Live, Colin Gray. And he's Scottish or Irish, one of the two. I can never tell the difference. And I have to listen at 1x because I can't keep up with his accent. It's a beautiful accent, but I can't listen at 1.5 or 1.7 or whatever I'm doing. And so I love everything about Castapod, except the fact that every now and then it just stops. And I was like, why is it, so if we're going to be promoting newpodcastapps.com, I really wish we could get one, now for the record, Fountain never had a problem playing. I think the guy at Fountain needs to figure out who his target audience is in there, because there's so many stats for podcasters. I'm like, you do know this is an app for listeners, right? So that's my take on new podcast apps at this point. But anyway, what do we got going on here in the? Oh, people are doing song requests now.
No, there was some question about the platform you were talking about. Are you sure you got the right name on the platform?
I'm probably not. It's not. I'm sorry. I always say Castapod. It's not Castapod. It's Castamatic. And
there you go.
Castamatic. I love the app. The app has. I mean, it looks like if I was Marco, the guy from Overcast, I would literally consider looking at his code and maybe getting a lawyer, because it looks like he copied Overcast. I mean, almost exactly. There are a couple things. I think it's weird that when I go, like yesterday, I wanted to listen to one episode from a show called Built to Sell, because it had the guys from AdvertiseCast on it, and they gave the behind the scenes of what it was like to sell to Libsyn, which I thought was really interesting. But I just wanted to listen to one episode. I had to go into a place that said subscribe to podcast. And I was like, well, I don't want to subscribe to it. I just want to listen to it. I thought that was kind of odd. But it just occasionally just stops. And I know it's a total third world problem, but
first world problem.
First world problem. Yeah. Thank you.
First world problem. Yeah.
Backwards. Yeah. So
but we got to remember, we have to remember these are brand new apps.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? And let's get some time. Let's get the bug. Make sure you're reporting the bugs. Make sure, they'll get them worked out, right? They'll get them worked out. These are brand new apps. We can't treat them like they're going to be perfect out the gate. we got to give them some time to kind of get in there, get them done. I'm just not sure that, that model, it's a model, right? I'm not sure it's the model. Listen, we know advertising is the way these things work. Works for TV, it's worked for radio, it worked for newspapers, it works in life. Most people don't really want to pay for things unless they pay for them directly. A hoodie or a merch or some of those kinds of things, right? Something to just give is really goes against human nature in a lot of ways. Not for everybody, but for most. So,
well, and Dave has a really good point. He's saying, and Dave, you did report the bug, right? And I'm like, no, but I am in this case because it was between last night. I mean, I always party hard on Friday night, which of course means going to Walmart and buying groceries. And, I'm driving along in the car and all of a sudden it just quits. Well, I'm one of those weird guys that I don't use my phone in the car. I didn't try to fix it as I'm driving. And it was just like, and then I was sitting there listening to nothing. And then I turned on the radio for 2 minutes because I needed a big fill of commercials. And then I finally got to Walmart and fixed it. But it was just kind of this is getting annoying. And I don't know.
They'll fix it.
Yeah.
They'll get to it.
And I also don't understand why in Cast-O-Matic, when I tell it, hey, download the last episode. And when I click play, it says streaming. And I'm like, why are you streaming? It's on my phone. It's So I just need to email whoever it is over there.
Yeah.
So
give them some good feedback. Well, I think this Web 2.0 bit, it's important in what we're doing. There's some important things coming with it, right? I think we need to all get around it and behind it and work with it. I do think it's the future. I don't think, the boost is just another form of Patreon. You're going to get just about the same amount of people who give on Patreon to do the boost. It's not going to be the be all end all.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Advertising is still going to be important in the future here. We can't forget about those. And
I do like Todd's been talking about how, and I need to dig a little deeper because there's Albi that is a really cool, easy way to make your show available to receive satoshis. And then there was another one I want to call Saturn, and then there's another thing. It's like Shantix, which is a drug for something, but it's some weird name that I can't spell. That I need to go in, and they're giving you now dashboards that you can see how, because it's something, it'll be a very small amount, like whatever, 5 satoshis a minute, but you can see then 5 satoshis, 5 satoshis, 5 satoshis. And then all of a sudden at the 37-minute mark, the 5 satoshi goes away. So Todd is going, oh, that's interesting. We can now tell where people are dropping off because you'll be able to see. Sure. And I was like, that's an interesting use of that. So I'm with you. I think it's about 5 years out. We'll see. But I love the idea. To me, I'm like, oh, this, it's one of those things where if we could get 5% of your audience to, give you $1.20 every episode, that adds up after a while. So that feature, of the ability to give a Satoshi every minute, right? So in those apps where we don't have the ability to see where people are going, where they're dropping off, it's a really great idea. A Satoshi is a terrible way to implement it because it costs something and you're going to lose a whole bunch of people. If that was, if I could go into the app and say, hey, monitor my listening and using a marker of some kind or whatever, that would help the podcaster know what's going on. I think we'd get a little more involvement, a little more people would turn that feature on, and we'd get better stats than using a Satoshi to do it. Now, again, Satoshi's almost nothing. It's not a lot, right? So in that case, maybe, or in that case, there we go. In that case, maybe it doesn't matter, but making that valuable. Yes, you're getting your committed listeners and such. I just don't think you're getting everybody. And I think there's a better way. There's a better way to implement that stat than Satoshis. Yeah. Well,
with Boost.
That's basically what the one guy was saying to James Cridlin. He's like, I get it. We're all kind of like, satoshis are cool and this is great, but it's a heck of a lot easier to just, buy me a coffee or PayPal.
Yeah, no, right on.
Right on. I'm like, yep, yeah. I get that. But
listen, also large scale.
Yeah.
The blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain and satoshis are not a good way to do this. Like, let's just say, let's just say 1 million people all started doing this, right? That blockchain is suspect for those kinds of transactions. I mean, when Bitcoin got popular and people actually started transacting on it, in some cases it took hours for those transactions to take place. Do we really want to build that kind of system on top of that blockchain? I think it sounds cool. I think they picked the wrong blockchain for it. I mean, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, Bitcoin was not the right blockchain to go with. I mean, so, it's probably not a scalable solution in the future. If this really takes off, I mean, today, it's like 7 people doing this thing, right?
Might be a little more than 7, but okay.
Well, it's okay. But there's they picked the wrong blockchain. And so it's not a scalable. Just imagine they build all this thing and they get there and then the blockchain hangs up because, the transaction times or transaction fees get expensive.
Yeah.
And then what? What do we do then? I mean, I'm not sure anybody's thought that completely out from a technology standpoint.
I like that thought. We're going to come back to come back to thinking things through. I do. I clicked on the wrong one. Neil says, buy me a coffee works well if Stripe ever gets around to giving you your money. I don't know if that's a Canada thing, because on my Stripe, I get it. I think it's the next day. I'm always getting, people do it. And then typically whatever I got, like today, I will get whatever I got yesterday. So make sure it's connected to your bank or whatever, or I don't know. It's kind of odd, but I'm going to hit the button here to let me know we're changing topics officially. But thinking things through, I went down such a rabbit hole of, all right, today I'm using my Sony VZ1, my DSLR, I guess, camera or whatever it is. It's not the webcam, which is sitting here on my monitor. And I fell down a rabbit hole because the Sony VZ1 came out. Everybody's like, this is the best. If you're a YouTuber, this is the best thing ever. And it is. It's a great camera. And literally 2 months later, they came out with a Sony VZ10. Because the one thing the VZ1 doesn't do is you can't switch lenses on it. So everybody said, you know what they said about the VZ10 or the ZV10? It's the best camera ever. If you're a blogger or YouTuber, this is the one you need. So the whole time I'm like, I bought it too soon. And I watched no less than 12 videos comparing the ZV1 to the ZV10. And then it dawned on me that if I get a ZV10, that the one that if you get the kit with the lens, it's probably not the lens you really need to do YouTubey stuff. And you need this one, and it's another $400. And that's when I went, $400 for a lens. Okay. And so then I finally found a guy that said, if all you're doing is YouTube videos, the ZV1 is completely fine. It's actually cheaper now because it's the old model. So my point is, you brought up thinking things through, and I was just like, okay, so let's say I get the ZV10. Yeah, the interface is a little easier, but other than that, most of the time it's going to do what it's doing right now, sitting on a tripod, and it's pointed at me. And I can buy a remote if I wanted to for the camera I have. And it just, I was amazed at how bad I got sucked into the new shiny thing. And I actually said, wait a minute. Let's think about how I'm going to use that. Okay, I could get a wide image thing, or I could just back my camera up. You know what I mean? It was just like I just was really surprised at how much I got sucked in by the new bright shiny thing, and I was like, yeah, I don't really need that. I mean, I've done that with a couple. I've done that with email lists where I get sucked in because it does this and that and that, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to use any of that. So the thinking it through. Have you ever had anything that you almost bought and then you went, you know what? Maybe not.
Well, I see a lot of folks buying these Rodecaster Pro, and they're like, I'm a podcaster now. And you're like, well, Like there's a little bit of work that you need to do, to get that done. I do. Listen, I'm in the tech space, so I struggle with that stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Buying, thinking like, oh, I got to have this. In fact, as I was buying this new computer, I had some good friends who I was saying, hey, I'm coming, I'm thinking about buying this video card and this processor. And they were like, yeah, no, you don't need that. You don't need that much power.
Yeah.
Like they'd ask me, what are you going to do? And they know me. So, which is really helpful. What are you going to do with this again? And it's like, well, this, and that. And then they said, okay, get this, get that. And it was half the price of some of the things I was looking at. Ed Sullivan helped me, when I was spilling wine on all my mixers and stuff and wrecking those. I went out to his place and we looked, he owns all the audio, I ended up with the M2 or the Mo2 M2. And, it was actually middle of the road, really simple, about $175 audio interface. Did what I needed to do. I could have spent $600.
Yeah.
But I don't do those things on my podcast, right? Could I? Yeah. Will I? Probably not. I mean, that's one of those, you have to ask yourself, I think, go through some of those questions. It's great to have, but Dave, trust me, I bought plenty of things that sat unused.
Oh,
I used 5% of the functionality, right? And you're just like, oh, why did I do this? That, my friend, is called marketing. That's the
good point. You mean
Right?
you don't need one of these?
Don't be boring.
well, you do though,
Yeah.
and you have them and you use them. I just don't, right? I mean, I use yours when we're
Yeah.
on this show. So
Yeah, it's always fun to see the person that bought the Rodecaster 2 and then they'll buy a Zoom PodTrack P4. And I'm like, why? And they said, well, sometimes I podcast from the woods. And I was like, oh, okay, that works, I guess. So it's interesting. Speaking of the Rodecaster, Daniel J. Lewis brought up something, and he's now the second person that has been saying something wrong with your audio, Dave. So I need to dig into this. Somebody said, and the School of Podcasting, you said you seem to have a slightly over-aggressive noise gate. And I thought, I
better
bet
this week than last. Last week was really bad.
Yeah.
But better this week.
And I think some of that might be because my furnace is on now. And
Let's make sure it's not me. Hold on.
well, I mean, I would have to.
I just muted. Did you hear a drop in sound when I muted?
No, I mean, to me, I think I sound fine. I'm not hearing anything. That's what kind of I'm like, oh, that's not good.
I don't hear it either, but that doesn't mean anything.
So, but I know I've been using. There's a plugin from Waves called WLM Plus. There's a setting there from Mike Russell that is a compressor, a pretty aggressive compressor, and then a limiter. So it is pushing your audio and then cutting off its head. And I love the way it makes it sound. It's a nice, almost like leveler in a way. And it just seems to, I don't know, when I turn it on, I go, yeah, that sounds cool. But I've now heard two people say, I remember Josh Liston, who's an awesome supporter, had said, dude, what's up with your bass? Like, and that was a while ago. So I turned down the bass on that. So I need to maybe, because I was
just tell him it's your art. That's my art, man.
It's my art, man. I like Hiss. It's my friend.
I added that in intentionally.
That's it. I added in post. It's on a continuous loop.
Just wanted to see if you were listening.
So thank you, Daniel. Keep me posted as I tweak things going forward. We got this question from Matt. He said, I use a music software called N-Track 9 for my editing. Now, here's my question. Does that work? If it is, as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, for my editing, and I want to switch to something more mainstream, but I'm worried about the learning curve. So my question would be, what's the new thing going to do that your old system doesn't? Because I'm here to tell you, last night I tried to use openshot.org to edit a video just for fun, because I normally use Camtasia, and there came a spot where I wanted to zoom in on a button, and I had to go through, and I'm in the help section. I'm like, how do you zoom? Couldn't figure it out. Finally punted it. I said, oh, you know what? I'll use Descript. So I went into Descript and uploaded the video and I transcribed it. And when I went to zoom in, I couldn't really figure out how to do it because, again, learning curve. So learning curves are not the end of the world. It was just like, I know OpenShot. I'm like, I'm not using this in the long run, so that's out of here. And I needed to get this video out. So I went back to what I've been using for, good God, 20 years, Camtasia, because I knew it. So there is something to say that if it does everything you need it to do I need to switch? So for me, the one that has the smallest learning curve is Hindenburg. It's pretty easy because remember, all you need to learn, I know there's all the compression and blah, blah. You need to know how to bring in your audio that hopefully you recorded pretty decently. Then you need to know how to drag it around. You need to know how to adjust the volume and maybe do a fade in and fade out, and then how to export it as an MP3. So you don't, I mean, there's like 37 options in there. You really only need to know how to do 5 things. So Audacity is a popular DAW because it's free. But if you're, unless there's something like the camera, right? I looked at that camera. Not only if I had bought the ZV-E10, there would have been a learning curve on, okay, how do I get this lens and what lens do I need? And I'm down another rabbit hole because I got to figure out which 16 millimeter is the right, wide angle lens. And I was like, you know what? This is doing what I needed to do.
You should hashtag this section, #regrets, because the opposite also happens to you when you go. So say you buy too cheap, you're like, oh no, all I really need is, these 2 things. So you buy the inexpensive version, then you start using it and you realize, oh, I could have used, like in your case, that setup with the lens. I should have just gone that direction. I think sometimes no matter what you do, you always think you made the wrong decision.
Yeah.
I think it's just part of human nature on that one. One of the things I think in this gear space, we just got to get good at selling. If we were good at selling the things we bought by mistake, because somebody else needs it, get rid of it, recoup that, go out and buy what you need. That's where I make the mistake most of the time. I'm not good at moving things on or returning them or that kind of stuff.
Well, and it's funny you say that. I love Podia. That's what I use for the School of Podcasting. But I've run into it 2 or 3 times. It doesn't let me put script in the header section. In other words, if the feature isn't in Podia, you're probably not adding it with some third-party thing. And again, does it do what I want it to do? Yes. Can I live without this thing? Yes. Okay, fine. So, but that is a case where I'm like, I should have gone with Teachable. Teachable's a little bit of a learning curve, but I'm like, nah, it's doing what I needed to do. So that's always fun. And it is, and no matter what you do, because this is why people spend 3 years launching their podcast. No matter what you do, there's going to be a better one in 6 months. And I have
for sure.
I have figured out how I'm going to get my Mac because I want to get my computer, especially last night when I was doing video.
Yeah, you should get a Mac Mini. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's how I'm going to do it. You mentioned all the stuff we need to sell.
Yeah.
Sweetwater, our friends at Sweetwater have a deal that you can sell used gear on their website. And if you get it in exchange for credit on their site, you get to keep 100%. I was like, that's interesting. If you say, yeah, I want to keep the money, I think you get 80%. But I was like, I literally have a closet full of stuff that needs to be sold.
Just turn it in, build it up.
Because guess what Sweetwater sells? Mac Minis. Yeah. And I was like, there we go.
Yeah. The M1 is nice. I think you'll like, hey, who needs boost, by the way? Look at this. Boom. Who needs boost? I shouldn't. I'm just joking, Todd. Don't come to my house. Just joking.
But here's the thing.
Thanks, Matt.
But here's the thing, though. Again, what did I hear? I was actually in the Apple store a couple weeks ago, and I was like, any chance you can kind of let me know like what's coming in April? And they're like, not really. But if I didn't work here, I'd probably say there's probably going to be an update to the M1 and there's going to be an M2, yeah. But I can't say that. And I was like, so now I can't, make any purchase till April.
Oh, you could.
I could.
You'd be just fine. And you got $3 more. Look at that. You're a 1/10% of the way there. That's about 5,000 satoshis.
Yeah, Daniel says that's 17,428.
Man,
There you
Daniel's got the, sorry. My math was way off.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem with this system is that figuring out the value, if you've got to get a calculator out to figure out the value, there's a problem. In the new media show, Rob Greenlee was just struggling trying to figure out the Satoshi thing. Yeah. And he related it to a rewards program. And it's similar in the fact that rewards programs artificially bump up the price, or not the price, but the points. So you're like, you get 20,000 points because it sounds cool. It's $2, right? When in a rewards program. And so there's a little bit of that comparison there. But I think you're right on, Dave. And all of a sudden you're like, what, isn't Jim a PC guy? Well, I'm on a Mac Mini right now. I have loved that. I think the Mac Mini is the perfect podcasting rig. It's priced right. It does everything you need it to do. It's kind of set up for podcasters the way it works. Plenty of power. It's going to last a long time. It's great value. Never said that about an Apple product. Great value. Never said that until I got my own Mac Mini. And then I'm like, they actually priced it right now. Don't tell anybody because I don't want Mac to raise the price or Apple to raise the price on this thing. It's actually a really good value. Yeah.
And what hub are you then using? Because that's the thing I realized. If you get a Mac Mini, you got to get a hub because there's like three things. You don't have to?
No. Nope. I don't have one.
Wait, how do you have two monitors then? I
don't. I got I have a 34-inch ultra wide.
There you go.
One monitor. In fact, it works better with one monitor. I had two to begin with. I had two 1080p monitors and I got an adapter to make it work. And it didn't work as well for me. So I just went with a 34. You can go wider. They're inexpensive. They're $300. You can get a pretty good, you can get a pretty good monitor for this. One monitor for the whole thing. Works great.
And then just drag and drop everything around. Yeah.
Just move stuff around. App or the Mac has a really nice window. Windows does this too, but it'll size the windows for you on the screen. You just click, boom, boom. It's in there. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Todd says I'm using Audacity as it's what I learned on, and that's if I have to do scalpel editing and audio, I open up Sony SoundForge. Why? Because it's the one I learned on. So it's always. I think that's half of it. Whichever one you finally tackle the learning curve on is the one you're going to stick with because learning curves suck. That might be the title of today's episode. Learning curves suck. DR says, I have Hindenburg Pro and Audacity. I'm still using Audacity as my main DAW is those sound waves stacked on top of each other and Hindi drive me crazy. I usually have like two or three. Like when I do the only time it gets crazy is when I do the question of the month, because in many cases I have to re-EQ every person, or so I end up with like 9 tracks. But most of the time, like this one will be like 3, be me, Jim, and the music. That's it. And if somebody comes in and asks a question, but yeah, a lot of times you end up using what you learned on, and that's just the way it is. So let's see what else is going on. Perception here from Neil. Perceptive to throw into gear conversation. Did my entire hit on national TV this morning before I realized my lav mic was draped over the back of the chair. Nice. That's always fun. Yeah, Neil is on, he's a big TV star there in Canada.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, well, why didn't they catch that? Like, why did those producers catch that?
There's got to be somebody in there going, that or that's one hell of a lav. Any way you slice it. Holy cow, it's picking up stuff. Here's a fun one. My buddy Craig says, I did a poll last week, and 40% of his audience wants him to change the format. That's interesting. And 60% want me to keep it the same. That's always fun when you have a pretty big split like that. But I think I came up. Did we talk about this last week? Where and if you see Craig's comment, I had it starred and I unstarted, and now I can't get it off the screen. Is there a way to do that?
Oh yeah, just go back to this.
Yeah, I have to find it.
You're gonna have to go back. Yeah,
to the chat, and here it is. Hide current comment. There's a thing at the top. I was like, where'd it go? Did you see that? It's at the top of if I do that again, it's up where it says live and things like that. There's a button.
What does it say?
Let me do this again. We'll use Stefan's. hey, Dave, didn't you want to schedule the show early? I did. I just didn't do it. Now, if I
said in chat, he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, if I unstar this, I lose it in the starred thing. And if I go to chat, look at the top of the chat.
Oh, it says hide current comment up there.
Yeah.
Over in the corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there we go.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think about that every Saturday. I go, oh yeah, I was going to schedule this earlier during that thing that everybody talks about, that free time. And I just need to set an alarm like in Alexa or something like that and have her, Dave, it's time to schedule as the podcast coach.
You know how well you respond to those announcements as they come 10 minutes before the show, and you're like, shut up.
Yeah, I have one every evening that's like, consider going to bed. And it's like, I'll consider it. I'm just not going to do it. So that's always
yeah, I mean, those don't help if you don't actually do what they tell you to do. I mean, if you start getting bitter with them and yelling at them,
right.
Is that another stress problem,
Yeah. Let's see. DR says, she's talking. She said, Coach Dave, not Dave, me. Was it you that said you bought some Black Friday apps from App Sumo? I did, but here's fun. I bought one. I know she's not talking to me, but I'll pretend she is. I bought SEO Crawl. And here's the fun part of App Sumo is if it's good and people tell their friends, they may not be ready. It's the Leo Laporte effect. I remember, I forget what software I was using. And it was a web host, and it was great, and it was cheap. And then Leo Laporte found it and mentioned it and literally just about took down the company because they just could not handle a ton of people. So I log into my SEO Crawl last night. I bought it, I'm like, hey, I should probably use this. And it says at the top, hey, Sumo Links, thank you so much for your awesome support, blah, blah, blah. Due to unforeseen, holy cow, we got a lot of customers. And they just basically said, when you click on this button, it's supposed to give you a report, and it's taking a while. Thank you for your patience. And I was like, well, that's something that's always kind of interesting.
Success.
Yeah.
Success. When you're not quite ready for that kind of success.
Yeah. It's always interesting because I see some companies over there that have been around a while and, they've decided for whatever reason, come on App Sumo. I always see it as young companies trying to get a bunch of customers quickly, to kind of get some feedback and get that focus group going. Because I used a tool called Brandly, which is really cool. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/press kit, it's got my logos, it's got my bio, it's got all sorts of fun stuff. And they just disappeared for about 3 weeks. And I went to App Sumo and I'm like, any ideas what happened to these guys? I emailed them directly. And just nothing. And then all of a sudden, me and David Hooper was the guy that told me about it. And he said, hey, it's back from the dead. I'm like, great. But it's one of those things where I love App Sumo. You get some great deals over there, but there's a certain level of you kind of don't know what you're going to get. I am still waiting because I signed up for a Brandly alternative and it was just so not what I wanted. I also signed up for, there was something that I thought was going to replace Otter.ai because it was supposed to pull out the topics that the transcript, and it just didn't. You have to tell it the topics to pull out, and then it will find the topics in the text. I'm like, that's not what you said. So they have a thing where it's, App Sumo has 30 or 60 days that you can request a refund. So I've gone through that process because I knew that one immediately. I was like, gads, that's so not what I was looking for. So there it is. Thus ends the App Sumo segment of Ask the Podcast.
The weekly App Sumo addiction segment of which app am I addicted to this week?
Yeah. Yeah. DR says 60 days for that. Who I never would want to return would be my awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome supporter.
And, while I'm doing that, I just realized I didn't pick a random. Oh, you know what? Well, there we go. Next one that comes across, the next one that came across was horseradionetwork.com. There we go. At the bot, as well as Latin Podcast Awards. Let's just read some, shall we? Flamealivepod.com, Live Stream Universe. That's our good buddy Ross. And you can be awesome at askthepodcastcoach.com/support. So, thank you to all those folks that we just talked about. If you want to try Podpage, which is what Ask the Podcast Coach, if you're on our website. And that's how we're able to do really easy things like askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And, we forgot to do the webinar thing. It just dawned on me. Remember, we're going to do the...
we can do it next week.
Yeah.
In StreamYard, the webinar.
I totally forgot about... Not only did I forget to schedule things early, but I forgot to do the webinar thing. But if you want to try out Podpage, go to trypodpage.com. And if you just can't get enough Jim Cullison, well, you can find him right over there, theaverageguy.tv, and check out Home Gadget Geeks. And if you are looking to start, plan, or grow or monetize your podcast, it's all there at schoolofpodcasting.com. When you think podcasting, think schoolofpodcasting.com. And of course, we want to just say thanks to all of our awesome supporters. You can see them over at askthepodcastcoach.com/support. And there are other ways to support the show. You can buy my book or just give us a one-time donation and that whole 9 yards. And
or you can do it on YouTube like Matt did.
That's
down
right.
Below. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
A $3 is that's one thing that I know we have the ability. I know there's the little dollar sign on our videos and stuff like that. But I just know I ended up having to go into my Google AdWords, I think it was, account to see. It was really weird where the money went. And then when I saw how much Google took, I was like, gads. Who do you think you are?
They pay
Amazon?
out automatically? When it gets a certain amount,
level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always kind of fun. Steven says, I don't know what they're talking about, but they brought up Mastodon. But
he had mentioned, does anyone want to talk about Twitter, and why would you? But
here's my thing. Remember, I started to talk about Twitter and then I did it. Here's what I don't get, and it's a comment on the mainstream media. Because, look, Kanye West needs some meds. I mean, let's face it, that guy's a little unbalanced, right? And yet, I'm hearing mainstream media talk about, his racist tweet, and they put his racist tweet right on the screen about his, it was Tom Webster, actually, when they think back to that, about, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 or whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. Got it? I keep hearing people talk about hate speech and they'll give some, up 54% on Twitter. I've yet to see a screenshot. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I don't believe anything in the media anymore. And I would love to see a screenshot with things blacked out, because obviously we don't want to promote hate speech. I just think it's odd that nobody can say, here's proof that it's just, they just threw out a thing. And I am of the ilk now where I'm like, what is your source? Because when they said fat was bad in the 90s, that was based on a report by the sugar industry, because when you pull out all the fat, your food tastes like cardboard. And what do? You pump it full of sugar. So, consider the source kind of thing. And so I've just heard people just I don't know. I just don't get the Twitter thing. Like I said, it turns into a political talk, so I get always worried about it. I'm just Twitter could be a whole lot worse. It really could. And then there's my other thing that says, you know what? This guy might actually make it better. I don't really know. I guess I'll have to stick around and find out. So just when it went through and they're like, oh, Elon Musk, and I don't even know why people hate Elon besides the fact that he's rich. But I'm just like, I don't know.
He's a little weird. He's a
little weird.
Here's what I've noticed. So I have to be in Twitter every single day for work. So I thought, well, okay, let me just see what happens here. It has literally changed nothing for me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's everybody's experience, but for what I do and the way I do it, I'm in it a couple times a day. I interact with people all the time. I couldn't tell you, I'd have no idea anything's even going on at Twitter. Now, much like Facebook, I don't spend a ton of time scrolling through the open feed, right? I don't. And on Twitter, I do the same thing. I have a very curated set of things that I look at, and I'm not out there perusing the general population for tweets. So I don't, and that, by the way, that's my choice. I chose not to do that. I don't have to do that. I get a little impatient at times with people who do that and then get angry about it. And I'm like, stop doing it. If it hurts, stop doing it. Just don't go out and do those kinds of things. So that there's no political spin or political commentary on that. I'm just saying from my point of view on Twitter, for the way I use it, literally nothing has changed from what's happening. So it's been a non-event. I know there's a lot of things going on there, but usage-wise, I haven't noticed any difference.
Well, to me, it just sounds like every other business. You got purchased. The people that came in did a hatchet job to make things more profitable. I was like, that doesn't sound like any different than any time somebody comes in, you know?
It's so politically charged, though. There's so much politics involved in this thing. You can't say that because it is. It just is what it is. We should not put any political spin on it, but it is. Like I said, I just haven't seen that much of a difference in at least the way I use it.
Well, that's it. I communicate with people I follow on it occasionally. I'm still not very good at Twitter, but I'm better than I used to be. Craig says, facts and statistics can be manipulated too. Oh boy, can they?
Listen, everything can be spun.
Yeah, you can.
Everything.
You can put a spin on most things. Yeah. So when you get, 2 people out of your 5 that reply to your survey, hey, that's 40%. It's like, that sounds a whole lot better than, 4 out of 5 dentists is really, that sounds good because it's almost 5, but they could have said 80% of dentists. I'm like, wait, that sounds worse because that's 20% that didn't. But if I go 4 out of 5, that sounds pretty, close. So,
you know what also sounds good? A little coffee. This is a good sound.
There you go. And I know, and Neil says he just got approved on Post. Post.form. Here's the interesting thing again, why I dislike the media. Kara Swisher is a advisor to Post.form, and so is the co-host on her show, and they do not disclose that when they put down Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, mainstream media, good to go. So, it's
well, you can like or hate anything. I mean, it's the nature of the beast, just in what we do.
Speaking of that, let me bring this up. The video is, I think, a little more entertaining than the PDF, but Sounds Profitable came out with Safe and Sound is this report that's also on YouTube. But the thing I thought was interesting, and I'll scroll through this a little bit, is I found that older people, and by older people, I mean me, people in their 50s, when they get offended, they do something very weird that most people don't do anymore. And that is they change the channel. Like they don't listen anymore. And then I also see in here but we're also more likely to be offended. That's the thing I thought was interesting. So we get offended more, but when we do, we just leave. And then younger people, there's a thing in here where it talks about, there are people that are actively, now it's a small number, it's like 5%, that are out there searching for things that offend them. To which I go, yep, there's your recreational outrage people that are like, what are you doing this weekend? Man, I'm going to sit down on the couch with my laptop and do a little recreational outrage. So it's like, that'll be fun. But the sample of the, survey was a little 52% men, 48% women. They get into that. But here's the thing. Podcast categories listened to. So this is ever listened to: comedy, politics, music, true crime, sports, history, food, and cooking, education, technology. That kind of sucks for us, Jim. Yeah, we're down. We're next to the bottom, next to business.
But we were first. Yes. We were first out here.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Now, percentage ranking each genre within the top 3: comedy, music, true crime, sports, politics, food, history, business, technology. So now we're next to the bottom. Have you ever heard of the following podcast? Joe Rogan, 72%. The Ben Shapiro Show, you remember him from Podcast Movement, 55. The Rachel Maddow Show, 52. And Call Her Daddy, which is interesting. I've heard of Call Her Daddy, but I've never listened to it. Not because I don't want to. I'm just like, I understand. I have an idea of what it is. And that's the one thing that jumped out at me on this thing. There are a lot of people that won't listen to a show based on what they've heard. And I, in my honest opinion, feel that is wrong. If you're going to not like something, like, do your own research kind of thing. But so that was what were we looking at? Have you ever heard? Now, have you listened? So people have heard of Joe Rogan, 72%, but only 47% have actually listened to him. Call Her Daddy, 31% had heard of her, but only 17 had actually listened. And so when brands sponsor content that listeners find offensive, podcasting is no different than other media. Some listeners will associate the brand with that content, but he was saying in the video, not so much the host. So like if a host does something bad, like Sinead O'Connor rips up a picture of the Pope, they don't get mad at Saturday Night Live. They get mad at Sinead O'Connor. So
yeah, that kind of ended her career.
It kind of did. Yeah. That, and she had one hit. So, but let me get down because some of these are, well, I love the one line. Have you ever boycotted a brand because they supported a podcast that offended you or made you feel uncomfortable? 23% have. So I'm not going to buy Tide because they sponsor the Joe Rogan show or whatever and I'm just pulling that out of my butt for the record. But I thought it was interesting that people will boycott. However, what actually offends most people, listeners, falls within a narrow range. So this is what offends people: swear words. So do you ever listen to podcasts that involve? So these are things that might be offensive that people still listen. So swear words, political views, discussion on vaccines, discussions on sexual preference and identity, frank discussion of racial politics. So you get guns, explicit sex, critical of religion, jokes about religion. Not a good idea. Promotion of alcohol or illegal drugs, sexist, and at the very bottom, racist language. So these are the things. Do you ever listen to a podcast? So I'm glad to see that people don't like listening to racist podcasts, which is kind of, if you flip it around now, what do you think is very offensive? And racist language, as it should, is the top of the offensive. So this is what is offensive. So I think it's the next slide. One of the, so it goes here. Here's again, racist is the most offensive, where discussion about vaccines is the least offensive, but still offensive, according to 12 people. Which of the following would make you feel the most offended or uncomfortable? Again, racist language, just sweeping all the categories here as it should. So the observation was, don't be racist. So I think we do a pretty good job of that on this show.
We should have had the numbers tell us that.
Yeah.
But it is important to follow up with that, right?
So it's an interest. I haven't made it through the whole video yet, but there was a thing. If we scroll down here again, do you ever listen to podcasts? And they break it down by age and who's getting offended. But it kind of showed that, again, older people will tune out, but they're also more likely to, listeners 55 plus are far more sensitive to potentially offensive content, but they're also more likely to sculpt their listening to completely avoid it. Where he was saying in the video that there are people that will purposely listen to things that offend them. And now that goes back to my whole groan thing, right? I always say, make people laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. And there are people that, it's funny because I will go into my kitchen if I'm going to be in there for 4 minutes, I'm making a sandwich or whatever. And I'll ask the woman in the tube to play a radio station. And if it's on iHeart, I know that I'm going to get an ad. And then as soon as the ad is done, I'm going to join mid-sentence because they then cut to the live feed. And it kind of, it bugs me that when I say that, I'm like, crap, I'm going to get another ad and here it comes. And yet I still do it. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I wonder if they're still doing the thing where they play an ad first. So, play such and such. And here comes the ad about, Tony's carpet or something hyper local. And I'm just like, but I still do it. It's like, okay.
For sure. Do you have a link for that? Could you throw that in the chat?
Yes.
For folks if they're interested. I do think in terms of listening to things that we don't necessarily agree with or aren't exposed to, I think it's a great opportunity to expand our, doesn't mean we have to agree with it or even like it, but I think there's some great opportunities to get some consensus on it. And you got to be careful with, let me strike that sentence. Everybody makes their own individual decision on this, but I think there's some real value in listening to the other side and having a dialogue and a conversation about that in a civil way. and it just changes. I think it just changes things when we've at least heard that, whatever that opinion is in that. And I just think we'd be smart to do more of that than less of it. Doesn't mean we have to support it or agree. Yeah. Right. Yeah. In fact, disagreeing and having a conversation about it, I think is really, really important. And so I think sometimes when we get locked into a single channel of thinking, I'm this way with podcasting at times. I have a group I'm in a bubble. I'm in a podcasting bubble, and I hear the same things from the same people, and you start thinking that's the only thing being said. And then, all of a sudden you read something somewhere else and you're like, where'd that come from? And initially you're like, no, that's not true. And then you start thinking about it. And you're like, well, okay, maybe there's some aspects of truth to that I need to be more savvy of.
Yeah. So I have a friend of mine that I just love to death. And the subject of Dave Chappelle came up, and they were like, oh, I don't listen to that guy. And I was like, really? Because that dude is my hero. And they were like, how can you, he's transphobic. And I go, oh, I'm so glad you said that. You have to watch his last special, Sticks and Stones. And they're like, no, I will not watch it. I go, no, you have to watch it. I go, he totally addresses that. I said, and you have to watch all the way to the end, because he has a whole thing about the I'm going to mess it up.
LGBTQ
plus
LGBTQ
plus communities. I have to throw the S on the end of that. And I said, but his story at the end, I said, you'll find out he's not transphobic at all. Nope, not going to listen to it. And I was like, that's as a teacher, the teacher part of my brain goes, that's weird that you're not going to take in content to make an informed decision. So it's, it's interesting, but,
what stretches it, Dave, it stretches us, right? It pushes us out of our comfort zone. It questions the foundations of the way we think. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like, and again, that doesn't mean you have to, you have to agree with it, but at least know what it is. Whether, and you might be thinking, I'm thinking about politics, but you could add this into podcasting.
Oh man. Yeah.
In the sense of what we're doing, at least hear the opinion, hear somebody else's side of it. And I think there's real growth opportunities there. I think we'd be better humans if we would do more of that. Just listen.
Yeah. The, Mike here from Two Guys Talking says, when you have to explain the value of having a potential attention span to those who have a selective attention span. Yeah. That's one that's just not going to work. Well, the other thing that kind of came out during this whole, safe and sound, kind of, they're trying to find things brand safe, and Adam Curry will be the first one to tell you can't monetize the network, because if you're worried about brand safety, you either have to water things down. And I just found out that there's a show called Sounds Like a Cult, and I did them on the podcast rodeo show, and it's your typical two comedians making fun of stuff. The reason I didn't like the show is the one person had a really bad plosive problem. I'm like, that's so easy to fix. But they find things and they go, is that a cult? And so that's the whole kind of point of that. And it turns out they were on some sort of network, and the network dropped them because apparently people don't like to be compared and question, hey, are the Boy Scouts a cult? Is this a cult? Is that, it sounds like, and so they got dropped. Now, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they keep going, as an indie podcast now that they don't. I'm not sure what network they were on. It was something that I'd kind of heard of. Like, it wasn't like a Wondery or whatever, but it might have been like one of the Pineapple or something like that. But I just thought it was interesting that here again, I was like, is this what, brand safety means? And the other thing is, I'll have to look into it unless somebody knows in the chat room. There's a type of insurance you can get for your podcast. It's blah, blah, blah insurance. I'm sure that's very helpful as a clue. But it's a type of insurance you can get so that in the event somebody sues you because, well, they can, this insurance in theory will kind of help cover you in the event you lose a settlement because the Boy Scouts sued you because you said they sound like a cult or something like that. So I just, when I heard it, I was like, that's interesting, because I just get worried about, I've said it before, I don't want to wash down too much of the flavor. I mean, one of the things that's great about a podcast is you've got people with attitudes, opinions, and, you know, it's like, let's not, you're not allowed, you're allowed to say whatever you want as long as you agree with me. I'm like, that's not really what I want to tune in for.
Well, we're not strong when we're all saying the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we need that diversity. And on the edge, listen, on the edge, there's always going to be extreme. It just is. Yeah. It's just the way it works out. And so we've got to, you know, I think in some regards, manage to consensus in some way. That, okay, I agree. I think this way, but you think that way, however that works, and manage the extremes. And it's not easy. It's super hard. It's a super hard problem to do. That's why most people are bad at it. You know, it's because it's really, really hard to do.
Yeah. It takes some practice. And I guess to me, they're just, I'll be interested to see how this shakes out. And there's just a part of me that go, because in theory, right, the mattress people, the food people, the mental health people, all the big brands that are sponsoring podcasts right now are sponsoring those because they have lots of listeners. And so if we make everything vanilla, you know, no real flavor to it, well, then people aren't going to listen. And so the big ads are going to lose their incentive to sponsor those shows. I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm not sure how that's going to work going down the road here. Todd says, my co-host, I'm going to put this up before I fully read it. This is always fun. My co-host wants the world to burn. And in my opinion, it is what it is. While I try to go down the open-minded middle road, it's a struggle every week, but it makes a great podcast. Well, that's true. When you have difference of opinions, you know, that will come into play. So it'll be fun to watch, but I'll put a link out in the show notes at askthepodcastcoach.com/418 if you want to watch Tom's video. And the other thing that was interesting, because I have it on my camera, but it's not on now. There's this thing on the Sony VZ1 that I can have it. I forget what the phrase is, but basically it fills in all the wrinkles in my forehead. Oh, yeah. It's like a filter kind of thing. I look at
Zoom has that filter, right?
Yeah.
I think you can turn on.
I have like, it just makes me look dreamy.
Oh, that's not the word I'd use.
I just turn it on. I'm like, wow, I look like there was a local guy here. He was a weatherman forever. In fact, there's like Dick Goddard Boulevard and things have been donated. He was a Cleveland staple. And I got to meet him once because he was signing calendars at a local bookstore and he would donate all this stuff to animal shelters and stuff. Really nice guy. And he had gone to the Little Richard, as I drop more names that nobody knows what I'm talking about. He went to the Little Richard School of Pancake Makeup, to where it just like somebody grabbed a spatula and just went on his face, just you know, and he had so much like, it was so weird. And when I turned on that filter, I was like, oh my God, I'm Dick Goddard. Look at me. I'm like, I've just got, so that's always fun. I'm feeling
a little smooth today too, as I'm looking at like my forehead. I'm like, it is not that clear. What's going on here? Like it looks good.
Yeah.
It's tight.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's I don't know. See,
maybe it's all the butter I lathered on my forehead before we started this morning. Coffee and butter. That's apparently the way to go about it. Yeah, it just kind of looks. Maybe it's the lighting. I don't know.
It's that.
I'm up for it. I'm for it because I'm out here picking up chicks. Ask the podcast coach.
Yeah, we have a problem. We need to hire a bodyguard now for the
for sure.
The groupies that are just constantly
for thousands
try to go to the grocery store and they're like, "Aren't you the guy from Ask the Podcast Coach?" Get that all the time.
No, I get that all the time. It's my brother. Yeah.
Todd asks, has anyone noticed that Audacity is chugging a bit lately? I know they just upgraded again. They just came out with a new update because I remember thinking, oh, wow, I need to update the Audacity tutorials. And before I updated the Audacity tutorials, they updated again. So I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. I heard that it runs entirely off the RAM. This almost sounds like a Jim is going to nerd out question.
Can you play the music? I got some things to say.
And now, oh, he's been waiting for this. It's time for Jim to get his nerd on.
I need to get that file from you to play it like at dinner. You know, when a question comes up and I'm like, hold on, hit the button. Maybe we need a stream deck.
And now you just need one on the table, right?
Stream deck on the table. Yeah. Go back to you and me. Okay. This is making me horribly uncomfortable. So we've had some conversation in the chat about this. Probably the lack of RAM is probably not causing the problem, but you never know. So a couple things to check on this. One would be there are some, and I couldn't give you the name of it now, but there's some software you can run. You can download, make a USB, a boot to the USB and test the memory. I was surprised when I was doing some crypto stuff. I was trying to do some work that required a lot of RAM and it just kept failing. And a buddy of mine said, hey, check your memory and make sure it's fine. And some of the memory was bad. And that does happen. I think we think that memory is infallible sometimes. It always works. So you might want to test. I know it's new, but you still might want to test it. That doesn't mean it would, if you have bad memory, doesn't mean it would fail on Windows at all. Like these things were fine. It's just as I stretched the memory and I didn't literally stretch it, but as I used all the memory up for these actions, which these DAWs, this kind of software does consume more memory than maybe a regular application, Word or Excel. You may never have gotten to those points, and sometimes Windows is pretty good at getting around them. But so check the memory. 1, 2, you can never. It's never bad to have more memory than less. If you have a Windows machine today, you should probably have 16 gig of RAM minimum. Now that used to be 4 just a couple of years ago, but Windows doesn't run very well on 4 gig of RAM anymore. 8 is okay. 16 is probably the minimum. Dave, this new computer I built, it's got 128 gig of RAM in it. Like
nice.
I'm going all the way. It's what the board supports. The last 2 boards where I've bought PC gear, I always just bought more anyway.
Yeah.
And you'd say, yeah, who needs 128 gig of RAM? Who thought 5 years ago you need 16 gig of RAM, right? So that being said, that's probably that's an easy upgrade. If you have a Windows computer, that's an easy upgrade. Mac, not so easy. You kind of this is why with Mac, you always buy the Macs that you can when you buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot harder to upgrade. So there's a couple things, Dave, there's a couple things that they can check there. One more thing, if it's struggling, make sure you've checked your hard drive, because that's the other thing. That could be, most people are on SSD drives now, and you're like, that's good enough. Well, when's the last time you checked it? How full is it? Some of those kinds of things. Just do some maintenance. You might be, what a lot of people do is they set up an SSD as their OS drive and a spinner is their data drive. And if you're hitting that spinner, okay, that might be doing. I know that's not the case here, but just some things to think about when we think about that hardware.
I've never played with this. Can I do, and now can I do this? Can I make you the big guy? Ooh.
Oh, look at that. Oh, I better pay attention.
Now, how do I get back to, there we go. Okay.
The world's not right when we're this way.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. That's crazy. Wait, hold on. There we go. All right. So on, and I can definitely attribute to when your hard drive's almost full, things get really wonky, because I got a thing the other day where Backblaze was like, your hard drive's almost full. And I was like, really? And my thing is with video. When I do a bunch of OBS stuff for Libsyn, I will, I forget about it. And then they're temporary. And I'll look over them. I've got, 27 of these, not super large, but video gets big quick. And so that's the fun part. Now that I'm the head of podcaster education at Libsyn, so
congratulations on that.
Looking for,
did you buy a new vehicle to transport the stacks of cash that you're now gonna?
No. I actually got a raise earlier in the year, so no raise with this. Just more work for the same amount of money. But no, we have lots of plans for 2023. There are things, what I'm really excited about is I've been throwing out ideas, and I threw out a bunch at Podcast Movement, and they have come back and went, that thing you talked about with the thing, like, why don't we do that? I'm like, yeah, we should. So I don't want to jinx them yet, but there are some things you're going to see me more involved with, webinars and things like that. So should be fun. Yeah, I'm excited.
I saw that, and then I was gonna mention that in the opener, and I got distracted by coffee.
That's it. Well,
stupid coffee.
I think that's going to be the name of your memoir, isn't it? Jim Collison, Distracted by Coffee.
Distracted by Coffee.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that title.
Got another question here from Spoon. Spoon says, and this is a good question. It really is. I had to think about this a little bit. What value when it comes to podcast conferences? So Podfest, Podcast Movement, there really aren't that many. Joe Pardo is bringing his back, Indie PodCon, I think in 23. But what value do they provide for non-newbies in this space? So beyond the obvious of, seeing your friends and your peers, are they still interesting if you're not speaking or you're getting a free ticket? So in other words, is it worth $2,000 by the time you get a hotel, a plane, food, somewhere between $1,000? You're unless it's in your city, you're probably going to check out at least $1,000 and then there are things you can, split a hotel room or an Airbnb. I mean, there are ways to make it cheaper, but it's still a chunk of change. That's a great question. Are they worth it? See, it's one of those, of course, the answer is it depends, or maybe. Like, I know I've gone to one event where I picked up a sponsor. I had one woman, I think I've told this story before. I drove to Nashville I had a client there that was doing a podcast launch, and she said, hey, the whole room's going to be filled with private investigators. You want to come to the launch? And I go, yes, I do. Because all those people, true crime. Yeah, let's go. And I met Kenny Rogers' assistant there. She was a sweet woman. And I didn't realize it at the time. Kenny was probably already on his way down. But I was like, man, Kenny has so many stories. He's got to have a podcast. This would be great. So I couldn't talk her, or she couldn't talk Kenny into doing a podcast. But literally 9 months later, she remembered me and said, hey, I have podcast questions. How do I schedule some time with you? So I was like, that actually paid for a large chunk of the trip, because I always drive to Nashville when I go. So that's the kind of stuff I think I don't know there are times when people just show up and you go, how did you, we met at the such and such event. So that's where I think it kind of pays off. I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah. I think they're great for both just building relationships and getting encouragement from other people, right? They're just a ton of fun. And then to hear what's going on in the industry, what other people are thinking. This is one of those, to go back to the conversation about some diversity of thought. This is where you can really kind of interact with people on a level where you can have, one-on-one conversations at a table over a beverage of your choice, and really have some rethink some things. I always come back from those and I'm like, oh yeah, there's some things maybe I should consider or think differently about. So I like them. The value for me is always in growth. I don't know if they necessarily instantly change my podcast. In fact, I've probably come back and made some bad decisions about things to change with my podcast that I immediately change back. But I don't. For me, it's personal encouragement. To go, to hang out, to be with people, those kinds of things.
I know a lot of people really like it because you may not have the most supportive team at home. Like, what are you doing? Talking in your closet? You're weird. What's up with that? And then you all of a sudden get to hang around with 20 people who are also talking in their closet, and you don't feel like such a numbnick. There's a word I haven't used in a long time. Don't even know what it means. But I know a lot of people like that. I just like to be around my people, and we're all sharing that. But I guess it depends. If you got, I used to take vacation time. It was important to me. So it's my only hobby at this point. I have other hobbies, but it was, so for me, when I wasn't getting to go for free because I worked for Libsyn, I went to everyone. And was flying and, that whole 9 yards. I just had, because I was married, I think at the time I had 2 weeks of vacation. And so 1 week was for podcasting and one was for doing something with the family. And that worked, but I was still trying to find ways to get to as many as I could. So it's, Coach Dave says, we don't need no stinking podcast events. We've been asked the podcast coach. So
this is like a mini podcast event each.
It is Saturday. Kind of. They're podcastparties.com. If you want to network with your audience, Seth, I believe is his name, Seth Wrestler. I want to say that's his name. I could be wrong, but podcastparties.com is kind of, it's a thing he runs and you can invite a bunch of people and then it's virtual, obviously. But it has this little picture and there's like different tables and you can go to different tables and connect with different people. Jason Van Orden just had one where it's just basically the hallway part of podcast events. And those can be really cool, especially if they're kind of done in a way to spur on conversation, not just like, okay, everybody switch and go talk to each other now. But if it's like, hey, talk about the first time you blah, 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 or talk about your favorite tool or whatever it is, to kind of give people a reason to talk as opposed to, oh, I'm Dave, I run the School of Podcasting, blah, blah, blah. And you all just kind of introduce each other. It's kind of nice to have a topic to get you going. So I think they're worth it, but that's, I am biased. I love podcasting. So I don't know. Jim, what is coming up? We'll go ahead. I look at the clock and I was like, holy cow, is it that time already? What is coming up on the averageguy.tv?
So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Dave McCabe, who I started podcasting with 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that, on homeservershow.com, joins me. It's the end of an era. Homeservershow.com forums are closing up. We've had 13 years of those, lots of information, but it's just, things don't last forever. So he comes on, talks a little bit about that. This little, he made me, he's a woodworking guy. Let's see if I can, it's hard. It's in a bad spot.
The green thing in the back?
Yeah, he made me this wood.
Oh, nice.
This wood album art thing on his CNC cutter, which is super techno, geeky, nerdy. Painted it, sent it to me for Christmas. So we talked a little bit about that. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. It'll be available a little bit later today. HomeGadgetGeeks.com. Nice.
On the School of Podcasting, I have Bruce from the New York Podcast Network. I think it is nycpodcastnetwork.com, because he heard my episode about networks and he disagreed with some things. And I'll be playing part of that. It's just a different thing. He almost made like a little podcast social media site. It's interesting. So I was like, that's a different way of thinking about things, which has somehow turned into a theme of mine. I keep running into people that are doing things outside the box, which is fun. Again, you need different perspectives to figure out what works and what doesn't. While I've got 10 seconds, the question of the month for December, schoolofpodcasting.com/question. What is your favorite podcast in 2022 and why? There's more information again, schoolofpodcasting.com/question. I do that every year because we want to know the why. And speaking of why should you come back here next Saturday at 10:30 Eastern time? Because we're doing Ask the Podcast Coach. We're here every Saturday. So thanks so much. We'll see you next Saturday.